Hello there, and thank you for joining us for our presentation today. We are talking a little bit about the Key Stage 2 SATs, which we are going to be preparing the children for over the next few months, and they'll be taking this May. So over to you, Ms Roberts, with a bit of information about just an overview of those assessments now.
Okay, so thank you, Mrs Cambers. So an overview of the assessments. Nationally, these assessments take place during the week commencing the 9th of May. As you can see on the timetable here, on Monday the children will sit a 45-minute grammar, punctuation and spelling paper. This is followed by a separate spelling test of 20 unseen words. On Tuesday the children sit a reading paper, which is 60 minutes. And on Wednesday the children have 2 mathematics papers. Paper 1, which is an arithmetic, lasting 30 minutes, and paper 2, which is a mathematical reasoning paper, lasting 40 minutes. Finally, on the Thursday, the children have the last of the papers, which is paper 3, a mathematical reasoning paper, again 40 minutes there. Now, all of the papers are sent away to be externally marked, and as before, writing does not take the form of a test paper. Instead, it is teacher assessed based on the children's written work in English lessons, but also across the wider curriculum areas there during their time in Year 6. Okay. So thinking more about the papers here, all of the children sit the same assessment papers and they're encouraged to attempt all of the questions to the best of their ability. So there aren't separate papers of differing levels of ability there. Instead, the questions get progressively more challenging, and now this allows scope for higher attending pupils to demonstrate their breadth of understanding, their understanding working at what we may call a greater depth level. For some children, additional access arrangements may be put into place, for example, a reader or additional time. However, this must be in line with usual classroom practice. So that may be for a child, for example, who could be on an individual education plan.
Okay, so just going into a bit more detail about the specific assessments themselves. Thinking about reading, the reading paper, it consists of 3 separate extracts from texts. There's usually a fiction and a non-fiction, and then maybe another fiction or a non-fiction. Each one has to be completed one after the other within the 60 minutes. The questions are designed to assess both the understanding of the text and also the children's inference and deduction skills. So that's something we've been focusing on a lot in class, that the children are able to read the text and kind of interpret the meaning behind the text. The types of questions do vary as well in terms of the kind of the way they answer. So there's multiple choice questions, there are some short answers, and there are also some slightly longer answers that will be expected of the children. And again, that's something we've been practicing in class and how to answer the different question types. So here you can see there is an example of paper, the front cover, and one of the extracts from the paper. That is a non-fiction extract. So as you can see, there's a story there about Granny and a story of Albion's dream as well. And looking inside the paper, this just gives you an example of some of the types of questions. We haven't got all the different question types here to show you, but just to give you a flavour. So the first one would be sort of trying to retrieve some information from the text. So it's just the children trying to search the text for some information. And again, the second one would be searching the text for that information. Okay, this is an example of a multiple choice question. We do a lot of work with children on test techniques. So for example, it says tick 1. That's something that we'd be emphasising to the children, that they need to be reading the questions really carefully. And another example of something in a tabular form. So here we'd be asking, the children are being asked for their impressions of a character, and this is asking them to maybe infer a little bit more about the character and what the character's actions are showing the reader. So just looking at those key skills that we have been focusing on in class, and if you can focus on with the children when you're reading at home, would be fantastic. We're looking to try and increase their reading stamina, so the amount that they can read in one sitting, and also the pace at which they read, because obviously there is quite a lot to read and answer questions on in that 60-minute timing. We're looking at a range of genres, so we've been looking at fiction, non-fiction and poetry. And we've been looking at how to justify the answer the children give, so giving evidence from the text when they're answering the questions.
So moving on to thinking about grammar, punctuation and spelling. On Monday, the first assessment paper that the children will sit will be this grammar, punctuation and spelling paper, which will last 45 minutes. And it will comprise of a range of questions which assess the children's understanding and application of the grammar curriculum. In addition to this, the children will sit a separate spelling test of 20 unseen words, and these words are all taken from the national curriculum, whether it be the spelling patterns or the common exception word lists. So here we've got an example of a spelling test, and as you can see, the children are presented with fill in the gap sentences, and it takes the following format. So it will be spelling 1, the word is thumb, mum hit her thumb with the hammer, the word is thumb. And the idea here is that the words get progressively more challenging. For example, spelling 18 there would have been architect, 19 was descendant, and 20 was inconceivable. So they're just getting progressively more challenging as we go through that spelling test there. And the idea is that the children draw upon spelling rules that they've explored in class over the years. So with that last word there, inconceivable, drawing on their understanding of prefixes and suffixes, but also the spelling rule I before E except after C. They're piecing it all together. Here we've got some sample questions. So as you can see, children will be assessed on their awareness of different word classes. Word class there just meaning a type of word. So the question's asking here, what word class is the underlined word? Joseph has beautiful writing. The children here using their understanding that it is describing the noun, the writing, so this must be an adjective, whereas Joseph writes beautifully. The word beautifully is describing, telling us more about how the verb happens. So here it must be an adverb. Apologies. Again, another sample question. The children in the grammar, punctuation and spelling test will also be assessed on their understanding of using high-level punctuation. And in Year 6, we do a lot of work on developing children's awareness and application of a range of punctuation. So we're talking about hyphens, brackets, dashes, semicolons, colons. In this instance here, the children have to read the passage and identify the 2 missing commas and add in a semicolon. So the children will read that passage. Last Wednesday, hopefully they'll identify that last Wednesday is a fronted adverbial, so we mark that with a comma. Last Wednesday, we performed a play at school. I invited my parents to come and watch. So after school there, we need a semicolon as it is separating 2 closely related clauses there. And then the children, would encourage them to think, I've still got another comma. When I first went on stage, I was so nervous. So we need a comma after the word stage there as it's separating the subordinate clause from the main clause. So it's all processes that the children will unpick questions like this in class. The children become more familiar with what they're being asked to do. Okay, so some of the key skills we've been looking at. In class each week, we cover a discrete grammar skill or concept. And as part of the children's morning Rise and Shine sessions, they are recapping previously taught areas. So different word classes, things like adjectives, nouns, verbs, pronouns, determiners, a range of different word classes there. In addition to that, there's also some new areas of Year 6 learning. So we introduce the children to the idea of the active and passive voice, but also the subjunctive form. And it's just important that the children are familiarising themselves with the format of these questions. So as we saw previously on the slide there, them understanding that at times there's multiple components, adding in 2 commas and a semicolon. It may be that they're asked to tick 2 boxes or to provide a written answer. And as this is a grammar, punctuation and spelling assessment, the spelling within that also needs to be correct. And that's something that we're encouraging the children to take greater care with.
Okay, so on to maths. They do sit 3 papers for mathematics. The first paper, as we said at the beginning, is an arithmetic paper, and it lasts for 30 minutes. So part of this skill in doing the arithmetic paper is the speed at which the children can complete it. So what we're doing in class is working on the pace that children are doing their arithmetic, It covers a wide range of arithmetic, including all the 4 operations, so that's division, multiplication, subtraction and addition, including the use of fractions, percentages and decimals. As with all the other papers, the questions do gradually increase in difficulty, so all children attempt the same paper, and then they move on the second one on the, I think Wednesday, isn't it, is the a reasoning, and then on Thursday another reasoning. And this is about applying the skills that the children are learning throughout the year. Okay, so moving to the next slide.
Just got some sample questions.
Okay, so the arithmetic, these are just 2 sample questions just to show you the type of presentation format for the arithmetic paper. So there's no context here to the questions, it's just using the numbers. And this is something that the children will be familiar with from the work we do in class. So for the first question, for example, we'd encourage them to use the column method of addition to ensure that they are adding their numbers in the correct columns. And then for the second question, that's an example where we'd encourage them to use long division, which is something we've been practicing lots in class.
Yeah, and any additional practice with the 4 operations is really beneficial at home, but we'll talk more about that in a minute.
Yeah, so this is just one sample from a reasoning paper, and as you can see, it's about applying their knowledge and their arithmetic skills in new contexts. And I always say to the children, don't be worried, because the point of the reasoning is that there will be things they haven't come across before, but they do have the skills to unpick them and to work them out. So here, for example, you've got your 6 pencils costing a certain amount, and then 3 pencils and 1 rubber costing a certain amount. And then the question is asking what's the cost of 1 rubber. Again, we're teaching them to be really careful and checking what the question's actually asking. So there they'll be using their division skills to work out the 3 pencils, and then working out what the rubber costs from there. Okay.
Great, so thinking about assessment and reporting, as mentioned, the papers are externally marked, so they're sent away to be marked, and you will be informed of your child's result in July at the end of the summer term there. Now, your child will have a raw score, which based on their performance in the assessments, which will then be converted into what we call a scaled score. Now, this scaled score will be representative of one of the following: your child working towards the expected standard, your child working at the expected standard, or your child working beyond the expected standard, more commonly referred to as working at a greater depth level. Now, a scaled score of 100 nationally is representative of a child who is working at the expected level for the national curriculum requirements for Key Stage 2. Below that figure of 100 will mean that your child is currently working towards the expectation. And in previous years, it has been reported and used that a scaled score of between 110 and 120 represents a child who is working at that greater depth level that I've just been talking about there. So let's just take a look at how those scaled scores look. So here you can see a reading paper, and the reading paper is out of 50 marks there. So we've got the child's raw score. If a child has a raw score of, say, for example, 28 marks, that would be converted into a scaled score of 100, which would mean that they had just reached the expectation of meeting the expected standard. This is in contrast to a child, say, who scored a raw score of 45, which then would convert to a scaled score of 117. And as I mentioned, that 110 to 120 mark there being representing a child working at a greater depth level. So think about writing now.
Yeah, so as we said at the beginning, we assess as teachers the children's writing, and then that process is moderated externally. But the children are writing for a range of purposes throughout the year. So they'll be writing some fiction and non-fiction, and we also look at their writing across the curriculum, so not just in their English lessons. So it says here about the revised pupil can statements for English. What that means is what the statements that we use to assess the children, they place a real emphasis on their composition, so their ability to use different types of sentence structures and to incorporate different features in their writing. There's less of an emphasis on the grammar, punctuation and spelling part of those statements in terms of how prescriptive they are. However, they are still important, and there is still a focus on that for the children in class and in their home learning, and in showing that the children can apply their spelling skills and their grammar and punctuation skills into their work. So in terms of how you can help with the children at home and develop their writing, any opportunity that you can give the children to write, be it letters to friends or family, even things like shopping lists. If they want to write creative stories, that's fantastic, or poetry. Also in terms of encouraging that sort of writing in non-fiction context, any non-fiction that the children could be reading as well is always really important, because good readers always make good writers. And finally, if you are able to at any point get them to just practice using a dictionary and thesaurus, it's something we do in class a lot, but obviously the more practice children have with this, the better. And just get the children into the habit of checking their spellings as they write would be really helpful. Okay, in terms of science, again, that is teacher assessed. There's no national test for science. And we look at the work the children produced across the whole year in their science, and then we give a judgment of either working towards the expected standard or working at the expected standard. There is no working beyond the expected standard or greater depth level in science. It is just those two levels. In terms of the units they cover throughout the year, we have already covered the animals, including humans unit, and they are now working on the living things in their habitats unit. And then they'll go on to work on inheritance and evolution, electricity and light throughout the year.
So lots of exciting units there to look forward to.
Okay, so this is something a little bit new, home learning. So as we have always expected, we will still ask you to work with your children on regular timetable practice. That's so important. It really makes a big difference if the children can secure those timetables now in preparation for the assessments. Weekly spellings, we'll still be testing them on their weekly spelling list that they're bringing home, and also if we can ask that you still try and encourage the children to read daily, read with your child, and also for them to read independently. The more they can read, then that really has a massive impact on all other areas. In terms of the changes that we're going to be making from now on until the assessments in May, instead of the current teens homework that we've been setting every week, we'll be now moving over to using CGP practice workbooks to set the homework, which I'm really excited about. We've purchased a book for every child in reading, English, grammar, punctuation and spelling, and maths. So the three books that you can see there on the screen, each child will be receiving one of those books each, and they will be the books that they will be using at home. So they'll take them home and then do their homework that's being set in the books and then bring them back. On to the next slide.
Let's take a look.
Yeah. Okay, so they'll be given the books to keep. They'll be their books, and the expectation is that they will be available to be bringing into school weekly. So we set the work for them on a Friday, as we do currently, and we'll expect the books to be returned every Wednesday. Okay, and obviously it's really important that you're able to help with that and support the children to make sure they're in their book bags and they're in their bags ready for the Wednesday. We will set the work and we will pop the expectations of what we're setting on Teams. So you'll still be able to see on Teams every week, for example, which maths, punctuation and reading exercises we're expecting the children to complete. We'll also tell the children those themselves. And then you will have the children will be completing a maths exercise per week, a spelling, punctuation and grammar exercise per week, and then fortnightly they'll be completing a guided reading exercise. The guided reading exercises do take a little bit longer, so we wanted to give that as a fortnightly expectation, so the children have a little bit of time to do those questions, to think about them. And then finally, we would ask that that could be marked with the children. So each book contains the answers for the maths, the spelling, punctuation and grammar and the reading in the back of the book. And we would really like that to be marked by you with the child together, so that the children can see and discuss with you any errors they've made, and that could be something that they could then reflect on and then bring their marked books back in ready for the Wednesday. We will then have a look at the books and go through them carefully, and we'll look at any common errors or misunderstanding. Then we'll use those to inform our teaching and to go through those questions with the children. So there'll be an opportunity then to look at any problem areas. Okay, so as well as the books that we have bought and will be providing, there's also the opportunity to further support your children by purchasing these two books here. There's a revision book for maths and a revision book for grammar, punctuation and spelling. They're CGP, which we think are really excellent. We've managed to secure them at a discounted rate of £5 for both books, so it's £2.50 each, but we are selling them as a sort of package. So if you would like to purchase those for your children, just to support them with their home learning or with their revision going forward into May, then that is available to do so on WisePay. Just pop onto WisePay and secure those for them. Okay.
Yeah, we had asked for payments to be made as soon as possible for those, so we can get the order underway.
Yes, absolutely. I think we'll send out a date for that as well, so that it can be done.
Yeah,
so ideally within the next week would be fantastic.
Okay, so thinking about how to support your child with their upcoming Key Stage 2 SATs. In school, we'll be conducting some mock SATs papers to familiarise your child with the format of the assessment and how that assessment week will look in May. So we'll try to closely mirror that as much as possible so that children are familiar with that process. We will simply be encouraging the children to do their best and try to attempt as many questions as they can on the papers to the best of their ability. Now, these assessments will help the children prepare for their transition to secondary school, and the outcomes of their SATs will be shared with their Year 7 teachers and may be used in their new schools to help group the children. Any support with the home learning, as Mrs Cambers has just mentioned there, would be extremely beneficial, as well as encouraging your child to adopt healthy habits. So we would strongly encourage the children to have a hearty breakfast in the morning, which would set them up and prepare them for the day, but also to be adopting a regular sleep pattern. We appreciate that COVID is affecting attendance rates, but where possible, please do encourage your child to be in school. The curriculum is very fast paced and absences can result in gaps in learning, so attendance is really vital there. Okay, so may we take this opportunity to thank you for listening to this presentation. Now, if you have any questions about any of the elements that have been discussed in this presentation, feel free to email those in through parent mail, or alternatively, I know Mrs Cambers, Mrs Scoble and myself would be happy to answer those at the end of the day, or alternatively we can schedule in a meeting time.
Absolutely, yeah, just get in touch, any questions at all, because we know it can be a little bit overwhelming. Obviously we work with the children a lot in terms of trying to help them through the process, but any questions at all, you know, no question is too small to ask. So yeah,
and in terms of the home learning expectations, you'll be sharing them with the children as well.
So we'll be sharing them with the children, so by Friday the children will be fully up to speed on what's happening, and as I said, everything will be up on Teams in terms of the sort of outline of what we're expecting each week as well, so that will be there to refer to. Okay, but thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
Okay, bye for now.
Thank you very much.